a global citizen. He couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand the multidimensional power of the Spirit of God to diffuse a man and make him relevant in all nations of the earth. I'm sure Peter will look at us and say, how blessed you are hearing this. If I saw someone who taught me before that experience, I would not have rejected that which God graciously brought to me in this 6th hour. I'll read from our pamphlet, and I will start from the book of Acts, chapter 10, that is quoted there, verses 9 to 13. I just want us to have a peep into the body of this meeting. I want you to connect well with what God has in mind for us in this meeting. If I couldn't finish this in this hour of prayer, we'll come back again to keep looking at it, because look, we are not going to leave any stone unturned. We are ensuring that everything is done the way it should be. On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop. Please, to do what? To pray. David went upon the housetop to look. He went upon the housetop to play. But Peter went there to do what, please? To pray. And that's critical. For me, it's critical. Critical. I told the brethren here when we came for the resource persons meeting, and I told them that the money to build Bedford has never been a concern to me, but the men to pray. It's never a concern. It's never a concern for me to look for money to do anything. My concern is to pray. Prayer is like electricity. Once it flows, every gadget works. Every gadget will work. But once there is no light, this microphone will not work. The camera may stop working, the floodlights will not work, the amplifier will not work, the mixer will not work. Nothing works. But once there is supply of power, then everything that is not working will start to work. I told them my concern has never been, how do we raise money? Where do we get money to build this place? I said, no. My concern is, how do we raise men who are prayers, who are dedicated to pray, who understood that nothing moves until you pray. The heaven itself is almost static because men that should move the heavens are static. So in this meeting, prayer is critical. Help me tell somebody close by, in this meeting, prayer is critical. I don't know how to whine people to do anything. I have believed so much in the free choice that God has given to us to decide. And so for anybody who's close to me, who follows in this way of life, there is none of them that I compel to do anything. I leave them to be convinced. I leave them to be persuaded to do whatever they are doing. So when they are, you can't take it from them. Because they are not doing it because Brother Eeyore said we should do it. They are doing it because they know that this is what they should do. And so this day and this hour, why the people that Cornelius sent, even though God said to Peter, I sent them. The people that Cornelius sent to bring Peter to where he was, Caesarea Philippi, that's where Cornelius was. And these men were very close to the GRA where Peter was lodged. Joppa was a coastal city, just like Lagos or any other coastal city. Life there is fast-paced because of access to the wharf, access to the world, because it was a trade route. You read about Jonah in Joppa. He took a ship and was traveling to Tarshish. And those in the ship were businessmen and businesswomen who had containers, consignment in the ship, and they were throwing it into the sea when the sea became boisterous because of Jonah. So Joppa was a very critical city, and Simon the tanner had his house close by the sea. No poor man built his house close by the sea. The waterfront. Go to Ibejuleki and try to buy a plot of land there at the waterfront. You'll be shocked that they're not looking for just anybody to live there. I have gone for rest, myself and my wife, at a resort at a beach. And I know it's not cheap to stay there. Why they came so close to where Peter was, he was close to heaven. On the housetop. What was he doing there, please? He was praying. Many times we don't know how close is our change to us because we don't take time to pray. Many times we take a change for a visitor because we never prayed. That person has knocked on our door and we treated him or her as a visitor, but it's a change. We couldn't recognize him or her as a change that we have been waiting for because we never prayed. We treat every man the same way. I don't know how many men Rebecca met as she was traveling from Mesopotamia to Canaan to meet her husband. And she treated them the same way. But as they came close, a man was walking across the field to meet them. And she asked the servant of Abraham, who is that one that is walking to come and meet us? And the servant of Abraham said, that's my master. She treated him differently because she prayed. The word pray means ask. The word pray means seek. The word pray means knock. This meeting may remain a casual meeting to you, and one of the meetings, if you don't pray to know, you may treat it as that's how we go to Bethphage every December 28 for us to fast. In fact, those people, They will just ensure you don't eat, and they will just be, you will not even sleep too. They are terrible people. Now, whatever name you call us is not our problem. My problem will be that you will treat this meeting as any other meeting. And you will treat this meeting as a meeting that visits you just for 72 hours and is gone. Peter was ahead of this man. He was on the mount, on the house top to pray, not to play. He was on the house top not because the inside was too hot for him, and he needed fresh air on the house top. And if you have a house built by the seaside at the waterfront, and it has a place where you can sit at the top of the house to have a view of the sea, you have enough to see such that you will not expect to see anything from heaven anymore. In fact, sometimes when you stand at the seashore and you look at the sea, it blends with heaven. And you think that the sea is also heaven. But this man came to the house top with a different heart. He came to pray, to seek. He came to pray, to ask. He came to pray, to knock. Can I read on? And I'm praying that, look, this place where I have come, you have come to do what, please? I didn't hear you very well. To do what, please? To pray. To pray. I told the brethren during the resource person meeting, if you don't pray, you will pay. And if you don't have what it takes to pay, what should you do, please? I told some set of people, it's not wrong to japa without being heaven. I told them, I said, look, there are two options. When situation became difficult for the brethren in Jerusalem, two things. Travel abroad everywhere, preaching the gospel. They left Jerusalem. They japa. And those who didn't japa, they stood in Jerusalem to pray. Two options. It's either you run or you roar. If you can't run away, you don't have money for visa, you don't have money for tickets, you don't have money to secure accommodation, because somebody tells you he earns £1,000 a month. And you quickly convert that to naira. You say, oh my God. How much is pound sterling now to naira? I don't know. But I know it's far beyond dollars. Okay, how much? Is anybody having such idea? Should we put it at 900 naira or 1,000? Let's put it at 1,000. So how much would that give you in a month? 1 million. I say, you mean it? 1 million naira a month. What will I do with it? All right, but go and ask him how much he pays for rent a month. Because that man may be paying as much as £800 a month for rent. Convert that also to naira. And so you will know that what you pay for a rent in 2 years, you pay for it in 1 month. Go and ask him how much he's paying for electricity, gas. Owó Èkó, Èkó ní gbé. I see God bringing us here to show us the way to navigate through life. So many things are at stake. But before we look at what is at stake, we should look at ourselves that is at stake, tied to a stake. I think it was Shakespeare in Macbeth that said, I've been tied to a stake. I cannot move, but bear-like, I will fight. Even though tied to a stake so that I cannot move, Macbeth said, but like a bear, I will fight. It is important for me to emphasize the need for us to pray. About the 6th hour. When it is 6th hour, please? 12. 12 noon. 12 o'clock, hour of prayer. That's why, and I'm not saying God hears prayer only during our prayer. He hears prayer anytime. But I noticed that the apostles, they observed our prayer. I don't know why Jesus sojourned with them. There was no record that they observed any hour prayer. I don't know why, but I suspect what will have caused it. After his departure, I noticed that they began to observe our prayer. You remember that Peter and John were going to the temple to pray at the hour of prayer. You remember? In fact, Cornelius, when he got the trance he got, he was also praying at the hour of prayer. You remember that Paul and Silas, while they were in the prison, it was the hour of prayer, 12 a.m. hour prayer. They prayed and they praised. And that great miracle took place. So I observed that the brethren in the Acts of the Apostles observed our prayer. Why we never noticed it in the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, I don't know, but I suspect that at that time, the temple has been turned into a commercial center. It's buying and selling. So it was close to the time of Jesus' death that he came to purge the temple. He drove out of the temple those who are buying, those who are selling, and he said, take this thing from hence. For it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer. I believe that that change took place that day. And the temple was flung open for men who wanted to pray. And they came there in droves at the hour of prayer to pray. And so, even when Peter was not in Jerusalem, even when he was in Joppa, the hour of prayer was sacrosanct. He was not going to joke with it. And I'm pleading with God that either here or there, wherever we may find ourselves, our prayer will remain sacrosanct. We'll get married to it, and we're never going to joke with it for any reason. So about the 6th hour, Peter went up the mountain, up the roof, and there he prayed. Now listen. And he became, how please? Very hungry. What's the difference between hungry and very hungry? Brother, what's the difference between reverend and very reverend? You may not know, he's an Anglican priest, so he can tell me. I call him Brother Lekon, he's Reverend Lekon, but he's our brother. He remains a brother. Am I correct? Okay, that's the chaplain of Ajayi Crowther University. Yes. Yes. Can you give Brother Lekon microphone, please? You allow a reverend to be talking without microphone. Yes, very quickly, so that we can trap his voice. I can hear him, and those who are watching anywhere can also hear his voice. Yes, very quickly, please. He said he deals with hierarchy. Yes, I know there is one they call reverend, and I know the one they call very reverend.
Thank you, sir. It has to do with the hierarchy in the ecclesiastical order.
All right.
Reverend is the starting point in Anglican Church. In fact, we have deacon before reverend.
All right.
And then after reverend, reverend canon.
Okay.
Then after reverend canon, venerable.
All right.
But when he can become bishop, if God's will.
Wow. So you don't understand that when you hear very hungry, you are close to becoming a bishop. Look, you know, we are in the Pentecostal, we misbehave a lot. Yes, we are very rude. Maybe because, I don't know, we seem to grow up in the wilderness. Yes, we seem to grow up in the wild like Esau. We are not the one who grew in the tent like Jacob. So our behaviors seem to be different. So that's why most times Anglican priests, Anglican leaders do not respect Pentecostal leaders, because they know we are not trained. We are not properly raised. No be our fault. And I don't want to go there. And don't drag me there. But you see, reverend is a starting point. And you move from there to become a reverend canon. You move from that point, you become a venerable. A venerable, a man that could be venerated. Such a man must be very trustworthy for men to venerate him, to respect him as though a god. And it is as you handle that perfectly well, that trust, then you move and you become a very reverend. Am I correct? That's when you can start to smell, if God wills, for you to become a bishop. And that's the one you call the right reverend. You can't be the right reverend except you are first and foremost a very reverend. So when Jesus gets very unto you, you are close to becoming a representative. Now, I minister in the Anglican, communion many times, and they use diocese. We use districts in the apostolic setting. In Redeem, you use region or province, okay, provinces. We use districts where I grew up from. They use diocese. And sometimes when they want to refer to the bishop, they call him the diocesan. He is the diocesan. He's a man as though there is nobody in the diocese. He is the only one. Just like the jailer told Joseph, I don't have inmates in this place. I have only this prison. He said, no, we have many. He said, no, just one prisoner is here, and that prisoner is Joseph. anything that's been done in this prison is done by Joseph, good or bad. So if anything goes wrong, I will not ask questions from anybody. I'll just say, Joseph, you did this. So I want you to understand where Peter took off from just being hungry to become canon hungry, and to become venerable, and now he has entered into very hungry, for him to enter into right hungry. Don't joke with that analogy. They are there for us to learn. And I'm not by that bastardizing that ecclesiastical order in the Anglican Communion. I just want you to relate with the Word of God so that you may understand the body in our hearts. If a man has moved from being ordinary reverend and has become a reverend canon and has become a venerable and now a very reverend, excuse me, what stands between him and becoming a bishop? And if at that point he decides not to go again, will you congratulate him? Yoruba says, "Ai ki alaseti ku ise." He became, it was an ascension, it was an arrival. He started from a point, a conversion, a transformation took place. Said, follow me and I'll make you to become. This day he became very hungry. I don't know how to where God is taking us. And you must search your soul yourself. Because any bolu bi en to mu kongo lowo. Do you understand that? You do? No. Pascal, no. The man who beat the talking drum talks with the drum. So when he beats it, you could have your ear trained to hear what the talking drum is saying. Okay? But when the man who is beating the talking drum beats it, and you want to compete with him, Yoruba says, no man hears what the talking drum is saying like the man who holds that stick. If he says, now, it sounds as, oh, if you say it, you may say, that's not what I said. He holds the four aces. It determines the direction of the interpretation. Because you don't know what he says. You may be correct, but it can twist, it can change it for you. So you don't compete with a man who holds the stick of the talking drum. No man understands what the drum is saying like the man who is beating it. And so it's important as we journey along for us to understand that, look, there are issues that not ignore in the build up to what God is bringing us into. If we are going to, it is late now to return. Should I say it is late? Or it will be disastrous for me, for you to back down. However, if you have not arrived and you have not become very hungry, there's a chance. There's a need to be. Because it's going to determine how far we're going to go. the hunger of Paul, even though I don't want to pursue that now, but the hunger of Paul to see the Gentile world saved is unquenchable. He did everything at the risk of his life, and he was never going to let go. He was never going to let down. And so in the space that God has brought us in now, we need to understand how it works here. And he became very hungry and would have eaten. But while they made ready, while the food was being prepared, and I told you, at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock our prayer, that actually it was the real Peter that was hungry. It was not the Peter that we know on the outside that was hungry. There was a pang of hunger biting Peter very strongly. But this bite is located right inside of his spirit, not inside of his tummy. And he would have eaten. He would have preferred what was coming from the kitchen of Mrs. Simon. That would have solved the problem, as it were, in Peter. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance. That was what should initiate him into becoming the right hungry. Do they appear before the College of Bishops in the Anglican? Before they are ordained? It only goes through seminary. All right. I know that there's a College of Bishops in the African church. I don't know of the Methodist church, but I know of the African church. There's a College of Bishops. These are powerful people, graced by God. God wanting to show to Peter what actually is the right food for the right hunger in him. The Bible said he fell into a trance. Help me check your dictionary. What is a trance? Can you rise and read for me, please?
A dazed or unconscious condition.
Again.
A
Dazed.
or unconscious condition.
A dazed
Or unconscious condition.
or an unconscious condition. When a man is dazed, I don't know how to say it, but there is this slap in Yoruba. Yoruba call it Igbaju Oloyi. When they give you such Igbaju, you'll be dazed. You'll see flashes of light, and for few seconds you will lose your bearing. Am I correct? You will not know where you are. You stagger. So trance is a state in which a man is dazed or he becomes unconscious. Now, I ask you, when a man is unconscious, Can you please explain to me, what state is that? What's the status of that man? What's the condition in which that man is when he's unconscious? Talk to me. He's not aware of his surroundings. Oh God. He is no longer in control of his action. He becomes almost 100% inactive. He enters into a realm where he cannot control anything. You can control how much of this message drops in your heart because you are in your conscious state. You can control how much, if I hold a knife, how much and how deep I cut into you. Even before I cut, you will cut it. Why? Because you are unconscious. But when you see a man that is unconscious, I have seen somebody who is in coma and they were looking for veins to resuscitate. Look, I walked away. I couldn't behold it. As they take knife and they cut and cut and they cut deep. And the person is not saying, yay. He's not saying, Otto. Because it's in a state of unconsciousness. As it were, dazed. Whereas our consciousness and our cognitive power is needed for life. But there are certain things God wants to show to us that it cannot be when you are conscious. Because you will not be able to contain it. So God had to permit me daze Peter. God had to put Peter under sedative. Paralyzed completely all his faculties for God to show him. In other words, Peter needed to turn to spirit for him to understand the spiritual code that God wants to show to him. He cannot. God wanted to speak to the real Peter. He first switched off the unreal Peter and switch on the real Peter. Now you ask, a man who is unconscious, how was he able to see? A man who is unconscious, how was he able to discern and define 4 different kinds of creatures in the sheet and yet in a state of unconsciousness? While I was using Bukumi as an example, one of the hours of prayer, and I said to you that how he looks, the way he looks, the way he responds, the way he reacts to issues are embodiment of everything that has become his experience in life. Am I correct? Because everything that touched him touched his body, touched his emotion. And then he locked that in his soul. And so the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his soul, that's who he is. But the real him is in the spirit. And most times the devil ensures that the gateway to the spirit is shut, so that that man will never be able to come out for men to see. There are men who died without being known in life. people who met them never met them. So I'm asking that God will switch off the outside Segun and switch on the inside Segun. Would you like to say that? And say, Lord, switch off this one on the outside and switch on the one that is inside. Make this one unconscious. Because as long as this one is conscious, God will never be able to make that one conscious enough to do what he wants to do. A surgeon switches off this conscious part for him to do what will give health to this conscious part. Because this conscious part will not cooperate. This conscious part will be crying about pain, despite the fact that this illness, this disease, could make him to become diseased. So, he fell into a trance. He fell into a state of unconsciousness. Hear the word of God. And saw, what please? Heaven opened. Beloved, I know that many of us might have witnessed the earth opening up, doors opening up, great doors, palaces, great places, choice places opening up. For the door of the house of Simon the tanner to open unto Peter, it was not a joke. Okay? It wasn't a joke. And I know very well that there are places you go to and the door open unto you there and you feel proud of yourself. Am I making sense? I wish I can explain it. Many times when I have sons, daughters, and they wanted to do something, for instance, in Ajayi Crowther University, I would just tell them, when you get there, ask for Reverend Lekan Ononuga. He's a chaplain of the university. And tell him, you are from me. You don't need a note. And they have received everything they wanted. Many times he would not even call to confirm, because he will have seen traces in that person that actually he must have come from Brario. That's a door that has opened. Am I correct? All right. But that's not the door we are looking for now. What are we looking for now? Is for heaven to open. There are treasures unknown yet. There are treasures unseen yet. It can only be seen in a state of unconsciousness of the unreal you and the consciousness of your real you. In fact, if you don't mind, okay, let me show you what I'm trying to say. Maybe the Bible will be of tremendous help and find utterance for me, you know, as the Lord, you know, brings